Hello and welcome to Academic Matters. I'm Brian Goldstein, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Salle University in Philadelphia. Joining me today is Mr. Steve Melick, who is Executive Director for the Center for Entrepreneurship here at LaSalle in LaSalle School of Business. Steve, welcome to Academic Matters.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Let's start with your journey to LaSalle, what brought you here, and really what prepared you for the role that you have now.
Sure. I spent the better part of 15 years as an entrepreneur. I had a little bit of commercial experience before venturing out on my own. And I started that journey not knowing what it would be like and certainly not knowing what it would end up as. But I wouldn't have changed a thing. I enjoy every step along the way. And in particular, the opportunities to arrive at a place like this here at LaSalle and in the position where I can mentor students and talk about that journey. It's a personal experience, and it's something that I think kids really get a lot out of.
So give us some detail about what goes on at the Center for Entrepreneurship here at LaSalle.
Sure. We spend a lot of our time focusing on programs outside of the classroom. We call that co-curricular education. Students are learning things inside the classroom around innovation and business modeling and business planning and things like that, both business and non-business topics. And what we do is we allow students to exercise those things that they're learning in a way that is very practical and also very personal for them. Classroom exercises give you a good fundamental knowledge, but it's not really until you apply them can you test not only your strength of that knowledge, but also your ability to be innovative and to be creative and apply those learnings in a different way under different environments.
So how would you describe or define entrepreneurship, and how do you introduce this as a topic of study and a topic to learn for students?
Well, I think I mentioned this a little bit before, and I'll explain why. It's a very personal definition. I think everybody looks at entrepreneurship through a different lens, and it is a journey. It's something that no two entrepreneurs will have the same journey, even if they have the same success paths and the same starting and ending points. Their journey has been different, and I think that because it's personal, everyone has to experience it in their own way. Some people approach it as a business exercise. Some people approach it as a creative exercise, a creation exercise. Some people like to innovate and improve other people's ideas. And so wherever you fit in that spectrum of innovation, there's plenty of room to contribute and many ways to end up on a very positive way on the end of that journey.
So regardless of what journey you're on and what point in the continuum you're on, how do you go about teaching students entrepreneurship and innovation? And do you think it is a skill, a set of skills, a mindset that can be learned, or do we come endowed with an innovative or creative or entrepreneurial spirit that then is just mined?
And that's a big debate amongst many academicians and entrepreneurs alike. Is it something that you're born with? Is there an entrepreneurial gene? I think there's certain characteristics that separate entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are described sometimes as being a little crazy and extroverted, and I think that's sometimes true, but not always. So I would find it difficult to describe a set of characteristics that every entrepreneur should or could have. But I think that what students can do, any entrepreneur can do, is first start with an entrepreneurial mindset. First is building a sense of awareness, looking for things that are wrong or things that could use improvement, and it's more than it's really a decision to do that. The second is having empathy, in particular empathy with the market. What are they experiencing and how would they apply your solution at the end? Innovation and creativity is a big part of that. Critical and critical thinking, logic and reasoning is a big part of that. And I think ethical behavior has a very prominent seat at that table as well, because at the end of this, there needs to be a mutual exchange. Entrepreneurship is not based on greed, it's based on mutual success. And I think that's something very important in our program and for all entrepreneurs.
So if students come to you and they want to get involved, what is the process to lead them through those characteristics that you just talked about, of being respectful, of having an ethical mindset, of being innovative and creative? So what does that look like when students come to you?
Well, sometimes students come to us because they know that they want to be entrepreneurs. More times than not, they don't know. They like the experience, they like the things that we're talking about. And I think it's also important to note that entrepreneurship isn't owned by business. This isn't a business curriculum. We have many students that succeed or go on to do some really interesting things and find themselves in deep ways that are not business students. Sociology students, we've got criminal justice, a lot of science and technology students, of course, communications, all over. We really span I think we touch every major here at LaSalle, and like most colleges do, they cater to all students. But we don't lecture. We want them to experience what it means to be ethical, to be a problem solver, to be creative. And also we teach them how to overcome problems. I mean, problems happen every day, every minute sometimes, and it's their level of creativity and level of preparedness and how they're going to deal with those. And so I think this is really a learning experience, and it's again, it's also very personal for them. We can't chart this out. The programs that we implement offer a lot of different avenues for them to pursue and learn from, and they're going to find what works for them, and it's a great benefit for the university as well.
So you mentioned that often entrepreneurship is directly associated with business students. Why do you think there has been that link, and then so how does the center reach out to students who are not in the business school to get them involved, and how then do they take that back to, again, students who are not necessarily in the business school?
Well, I think people first associate entrepreneurship with business because there is a strong business component. People need to understand there's a selling capacity needed, and there's some financial statements and financial workings and underpinnings to running a business. But it doesn't start with business. It starts with a passion. It starts with an idea and a desire to make things better. And those qualities are not owned by business folks. Certainly there are great business students and business people in the world that have gone on and started terrific businesses, but not always. Many times, and myself included, I was a computer science major in college. I didn't have a business background, and business was something that I had to learn, and I've come to appreciate the value of it, but I don't see it as central to entrepreneurship.
So how did you get into entrepreneurship, then being a computer science major?
Well, a whole lot of naivety comes with youth, and a few years out of school I decided to venture out on my own. I learned quickly that I wouldn't have the full support of my parents, who thought that having a good stable job was important. I learned that friends and others turn jealous as soon as there's a little bit of success, and so there were a lot of life lessons along that early stage. But I felt that I could do something better. I could do something different, and I wanted that level of control and ability to have my own successes and make my own mistakes. And I certainly had an abundance of both.
So do you bring that to the teaching that you do? I've been fortunate enough to see you teaching in the makerspace, and I want you to talk a little bit about the makerspace and spaces actually here at LaSalle and what goes on in them, and that spirit of allowing students to fail, and how you bake that into the teaching that you do in the center and in the makerspaces.
Well, we start out by having very few rules, because rules are meant to keep you away from trouble. If I could create a rule, my rules would be to try and get people into trouble, because that's really where you learn. And the first learning is how to overcome that fear of failure. One of the first things we need to do is we need to break students of that fear in whatever they do, whether it's a personal project or something we're doing on behalf of clients, that fear of failure, the fear of maybe not looking smart or not feeling that you've come up with the right or the most perfect solution. And after they've overcome that, it's the level of creativity now is unhampered. We just see it pour out. And the more mistakes they made, the more creative they get, and the more courageous they become. And you see this transformation within students, and some of the quotes that we've gotten over the years have been absolutely terrific, that we've changed people's lives, and I don't think I've changed their lives. I think we've given them the platform to change their own lives.
So I know one of the strands, if you will, of the center is the Business Engagement Center as part of the Center for Entrepreneurship. So can you talk a little bit about what that is and what goes on in that strand of the center?
This fits a very important piece of the overall puzzle. We have a makerspace in our library where students can be creative and envision new products and new ideas to implement in the market. We have an Open Minds competition that's held every year. It's our biggest event. We have 80 to 100 kids learn about the innovation life cycle. And then we have a Business Engagement Center where those students who enjoy entrepreneurship, the execution of a business idea, but may not have something really fully baked and ready to go to market with. We give them the ability to work with small and startup companies to let those founders fulfill their dreams. Many of these founders are great idea people, or they have an interesting product, but they don't know how to bring it to market. They lack the fundamental marketing knowledge and customer engagement approaches and financial planning. And this tends to be a little bit more business focused, but here again, we have students that are non-business majors in this program doing very well. We have digital art students, we have some sociology, and we have a psychology student, and they contribute tremendously to this program without any real business education. And this is a program where we consult with small and startup companies, people that need us most but can afford us least. But without us, we've heard time and time again that we give them the logistical support and the backbones to build their company, to build upon an idea and bring to market. And so far, we've brought 3 companies to market. We're in the process of starting 1 company here by students, and we're having a great time with it, and our clients couldn't be happier.
So most people have probably seen or know about the Shark Tank model. Is that the mechanism, the type that you use at the Business Engagement Center to launch students, or is it a little more comprehensive than we typically see in an 8-minute segment on Shark Tank?
I think each one of those episodes is probably an hour, 2 hours in length total, but they boil it down nicely to 8 minutes. I think it starts with a hard, critical assessment of the opportunity, and it would be I don't have the power to tell someone their idea is no good. What I can do is give them the tools to make that decision, is it worth going forward or not? And so those are the tools that we employ and help entrepreneurs, help founders and students through that process of self-discovery. And in doing so, they've strengthened their business concept, or maybe made the decision not to go forward, and that's just as important too.
So in about 30 seconds or so that we have left, can you talk a little bit about the Open Minds Innovation Competition that we have here at LaSalle, and then perhaps end with how people can get in touch with you?
This is a great event. Perhaps one of my favorite things we do here at LaSalle. We spend a whole weekend. And if you know college kids, it's tough to get them to commit to a whole weekend of anything, but particularly something that might have an academic benefit. But they have a great time. We start Friday night, work all the way through Sunday, present to a panel of judges, and they learn and experience the innovation life cycle. They start with a set of problems that they perceive, and we give them the tools to learn how to build up a solution, present that at the end for some awards, and students reflect very positively on this. They came for the award, but they return year after year for the experience.
That's great. So people can get in touch with you how?
LCE@lasalle.edu is one way, and our door is always open. We love to talk to students, alumni, faculty, and people in the community.
Great. Steve Melick, Executive Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at LaSalle. Thank you for being here on Academic Matters.
Thank you.
Wake each morning and get lost in the adventure, knowing that you will be ready for wherever the day takes you. Learn from those willing to teach. Their wisdom and their strength will become yours. They will impart to you a tradition of education nationally recognized for its value. A tradition worthy of your best efforts. As young men and women of LaSalle, we will invest in you the guidance to blaze your own path, to go forth into the unknown with new certainty, to realize your full potential as professionals, as leaders, as citizens. To take up your place as the accountants, speech therapists, journalists, and CEOs of your generation. To impact this city and the world beyond. These adventures are yours, and you are ready for them. Explorers are never lost.
Welcome back to Academic Matters. I'm Brian Goldstein, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Salle University. Now in Academic Matters, I am pleased to welcome Dr. Candace Robertson-James. She is new to our LaSalle community, and in a second we'll start with her journey here. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Public Health in our School of Nursing and Health Sciences. Welcome, Candace.
Thank you.
So let's begin by your journey here. I know you had been an adjunct here before a full-time faculty member, so talk about your journey, how you came to LaSalle, and a little bit about your background.
Awesome. Well, I am from Philadelphia originally, and I always knew I was interested in health, and of course I had no idea what public health was. And like most people, they got told that I could either become a doctor or a nurse. So I went into undergraduate with a biology degree, kind of thinking I would pursue something in medicine, but not quite sure. And so I taught middle school afterwards. I wound up teaching middle school science, and it was there that I really fell in love with public health. I really found, every day my students would come to me every morning, unfortunately, Ms. Robertson, can I see you in the hallway? And, would just tell me stories of things that had happened and their lives. My brother was shot last week, something's going on in my house, and I was excited to be able to talk with them and stay after school and spend a lot of time, created a science club and do all sorts of great things, but realized that, there was a larger system at play, and that they would be judged individually based off of this larger system. And so that's how I really found public health, and through some other programs really kind of fell in love with public health, and after teaching 2 years decided to go back and get my master's in public health degree. Then wound up at Drexel for 14 years, where I was active in teaching and running community health programs, and I'm excited to be at LaSalle now.
And we are excited that you're here. So I know in a short period of time it's probably very difficult and too complex to define public health, but perhaps give us a sense of what you mean by public health and how that differs from being a doctor or nurse that maybe you were being pointed toward earlier in your life.
Right, absolutely. Well, I think that, most people have no idea what public health means, and I think it's three things I always say. The kind of more obvious attention towards promoting health of populations and groups and preventing disease in those same populations and groups. But for me, it's this tension between individual responsibility, we teach people to eat healthy or to engage in certain behaviors, but also this collective action, that there's these pillars of society that we need for people to be healthy, that we need safe streets and sidewalks, and we need environments and clean air, and we need grocery stores, and we need people to have those fundamental things. And so it's this kind of collective balance between what we can help and empower individuals to do, but then also collectively as a society, what we're also responsible for providing.
So unpack that a little bit in the sense of describing perhaps more deeply that tension between the individual and the public or community. So how do you teach that in your courses? And then maybe you can weave in the kind of research that you do that also tries to, if you will, disentangle this tension.
Absolutely.
Or tamp down this tension.
Absolutely. I really, began to address it in the first course in Introduction to Public Health, and, helping people to think through, oftentimes when we think about health, we often are pointed to thinking about our individual health. We're responsible for eating that apple and making sure that we make the right choices, but really understanding that our individual choices are really grounded in a larger framework based off of our family experiences, based off of the communities that we come from, based off of the access that we have. So I can tell someone that you need to get so much exercise every single day, but if you don't come from a neighborhood where it's not safe, to walk outside, where it's not safe to be around certain, after a certain time period, then you don't really have that access, where you might not have the finances to join a gym, where you might, be working 2 or 3 jobs to pay for, what you have to, that it's very complex. And so, thinking about what we all live in systems, and sometimes we kind of forget the systems that we're all a part of. And, it's really the found work of all of those systems that come to play. And that's really where we get to the issues of health disparities, that, I always say the health differences are just that, differences. Women have cervical cancer and men don't, right? That's a difference, and we can explain that difference. We're not trying to change that difference, but health disparities really is a difference that we see that we shouldn't see, that it's a difference that's based off of some sort of social injustice. And that's, definitely what I'm passionate about, and talk a lot often in my work and background has really been, grounded in that health disparities.
So I'll start with the public health issue being disparate. So when you say it's disparate, what do you mean by that? What are health disparities?
So health disparities are really differences that we observe in health outcomes between different groups of people. And those differences are the root of some sort of social injustice, some sort of outcome that we shouldn't expect to see. So when we look at an issue like asthma or heart disease or gun violence or things of that nature, we shouldn't see huge differences by race or, huge differences by geography. And those differences are a result of, social economic status, of educational systems, of communities that have not been invested in, and lots of other issues. And so when we kind of think about those differences, they're not biological in nature, they're social in really their foundation.
So if you're working at all of those levels, so at some point you're working at the level of the individual, and you're working at the level, more likely at the level of the community, how do you, in again, teaching students and also in your research, get at those community issues, those societal issues, that you feel like you're making a difference and making change without becoming incredibly frustrated because there's so many factors that impinge on the public's health?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that definitely in the student's perspective, it's easy to kind of just feel like there's nothing you can do and that these systems are so much greater than themselves. But I think, one of the great things that I've been privileged to kind of have is kind of a background in community participatory research. And that's really when you invite communities in to be a part of the research. So instead of, I am researcher and, you are participant, it's like we are researching this together and we're a part of this. And so I think that brings a level of power and hope and inspiration to the research process where, all parts of that community, all parts of those systems, faith communities, education sectors, business, academia, all coming together to really think about what role do we have and how can we work together to kind of solve these issues.
So let's make this more specific in terms of your research. And I know at least some of that research has been with teenagers, and as the dad of one former teenager and one current teenager, I imagine that working with that group presents its difficulty. So talk about your scholarship and how you blend this community-based participatory research model with teenagers especially.
Absolutely. So one of the great things that we've had a chance to do is 2 things. We've run health interventions that are focused on teens. One of the things that we did was looking at freshmen and thinking about their nutritional habits, which unfortunately are not the best, and thinking about other risk behaviors that they have, really trying to educate them and help them to creatively address some of the things that they'll be presented with, some of the real peer pressures and things of that nature. And so one of the things that we did was we from the beginning brought teens in to say, we want you to be a part of the messages. How do we best reach your population? While I think I'm young, I'm not as young as I think I am. So I need you to kind of tell us, what do you need to hear? What's going to work? What's not going to work? And then we also use social media. And so we brought a group of teens in every year to really help us develop those messages and really kind of vet those things and say, what's out there on social media that we can use, as well as what could we develop? What do you need to hear? What issues are you passionate about? And, the teens did a phenomenal job of helping us craft those messages, helping us to, really be creative in how we were presenting the information and really make a difference, tell the stories, I think, that really got their attention and made a difference.
So what are some examples of those stories that did make a difference, that might be generalizable, if you will, to folks who are watching, especially those who are involved with or have teenagers?
Absolutely. So one of the things that you know, I will always remember is we were doing some work around nutrition and eating healthy, and you know, we played all these interactive games with the teens to kind of get them involved and talk about the fast food, you know, eating fast food a lot, and how many of them kind of think, you know, heart disease is way down the line, hypertension is way down the line. But we had these stories of, you know, 16-year-olds who had heart health complications and 9-year-olds who are already being diagnosed with hypertension, and they, you know, that kind of light bulb went on that, wait a minute, this is not something that I might have to worry about 30 years from now or 40 years from now. And one student came back and said that her mom has diabetes, and her other people in her family have diabetes, and you know, she kind of went home and had to talk with her parents and said, you know, we need to make some changes, and this is what I learned in school, and this is what I learned as part of the program. She came back, she did a whole presentation, and so, you know, to kind of put up on social media. And so that was just kind of one example of kind of taking, you know, the message that she had learned through, you know, sort of out of that creativity to kind of really take it home to her family, and then also kind of really engage in that herself.
So how did that differ from interventions that had come before that I'm imagining were not as successful as what you were able to do?
Well, I think unfortunately a lot of times in public health we can become a little preachy, and
Yeah.
so we just don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and you know, the health police. And so oddly enough, that doesn't, you know, rub everyone the right way, and so you know, people can kind of shut down. So involving teens, kind of getting them where they're going to have the most attention, I think really made a difference, and having their voice be a part of it really made a difference.
So I know you're also director of the Master of Public Health program. In the little 30 seconds we have left, maybe give some information about that, and then how people in our viewing audience can get in touch with you.
Great. So the Master of Public Health program is a great program to really help students engage and really be a part of this public health community. And we need it now more than ever. And so I encourage everyone to get in contact with us. I'm Robertson-James at lasalle.edu, and you can get our website is www.lasalle.edu/MPH.
Terrific. Dr. Candace Robertson-James, thank you very much for being on Academic Matters at LaSalle.
Thank you.